Thank you so much for joining us, for watching that film. Just of note, and we'll talk about it before, if you experience some technical difficulties or some lag, we apologize for that. That can occur while we're streaming and doing a live simultaneously. The good news is that we will be releasing for the first time the YouTube public link to the film in this chat, in this stream, that you can go, you can watch on your own, you can share, like, comment, share again, and then share it some more. So after the stream is done, we will release that here, and you can go on and watch at your leisure. With that, I quickly want to note a comment that I loved by Alice Barker at 2:19 p.m. Alice wrote, "This is so accurate, it's haunting. This is what I wish people pictured when I say I have OCD. Not just being a neurotic neat freak. For a long time when I was a young teenager, I actually feared I was schizophrenic because of the voices and false narratives memories." Thank you so much for sharing that, Alice. We appreciate you. And that is one of the main reasons that this film is made. Let me quickly introduce the amazing filmmakers. So first, we have the writer of the film, collaborating director and producer, Stephen Brumwell. Feel free to say hi, Steve.
Hello.
The director, co-writer, producer, and editor, the everything Renaissance man himself, Rolf Nyas.
Hi, everyone. Such a privilege to be with you all. Thanks for being here.
We have the executive producer, founder of Taming Olivia, all around amazing OCD advocate, Catherine Benfield.
Hi, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us.
And last but certainly not least, we have the CEO of OCD Action, who is a huge contributor and support of the film, Lee Wallbank. Hi, Lee.
Hi, everyone. It's a privilege to be here.
So, first of all, as you watch the film, whatever questions came to mind, please feel free to load the chat in the comment thread with questions for our filmmakers or for Lee. Before we get started, I quickly want to introduce Lee to the U.S. audience. If you don't know her, OCD Action, if you will, is almost the sister organization of the IOCDF in the U.K. They're an amazing nonprofit in the U.K., an amazing foundation. So, Lee, if you quickly wanted to say a bit about your OCD Action and yourself.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ethan. It's wonderful to be here and to be here with Steve and Rolfin and Catherine. They're an amazing team, and the film was wonderful, wasn't it? It was so powerful, and I think a rare capture of the realities of OCD. And OCD Action in the UK, we do a lot of work to try and raise awareness of OCD, which is why we've been so supportive, I hope, of the production of this film. And we also do a lot of work to provide information and support to people directly affected or family members of people with OCD. So we have helplines, and we provide online support groups, so over 50 online support groups each month. So if you want either information about accessing treatment for OCD or to join a community and connection, we'd really encourage you to get in touch with us. And we also provide support and information for young adults as well, so people 14 and upwards. So thank you so much, Ethan, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from everybody.
Thank you, Lee. Appreciate it. Steve, Catherine, Rolfin, and Lee, I just want to point out some of the amazing comments in the threads talking about how beautiful the film was, how it so interpreted individuals' OCD in their own mind. I just saw this, Jan B's comment at 2:26 p.m. The next time someone thinks I'm arranging shoes in order of color or sorting out my sock drawer, I'm sending them this. Brilliant. So I love that comment. Let's turn it over first and foremost. And also, please, please, please ask questions. But this film came from the mind of Steve. Steve, please give us some background into where this came from.
Well, first of all, Charlie's kind of me, and by complete coincidence, I'm actually wearing the same outfit as Charlie is in the film, which I didn't actually plan, so that's kind of weird. So I've had OCD all my life. I've only recently pinpointed it to what I think was a traumatic event when I was a kid, and I wasn't diagnosed fully until I was 18. And can you hear me?
I think your ear.
Fully...
Go ahead.
Is that okay? Can everybody hear me now?
Yeah. It automatically muted yourself, Steve, when you pulled those out.
So good start.
That's much better. Much better.
Working tech.
I'm obviously really fantastic with technology. Yeah, so I wasn't diagnosed with my OCD until I was 18. I'm 51 now, which I know is hard to believe. And always been a writer, always been creative. Got back on the writing track about 7 years ago and just wanted to write something that expressed my relationship with OCD, because I wasn't connected to the advocate world at all then, or the bigger world. It was just me and my OCD in my own little world and my own little hub. And you know, I'd seen Monica on Friends. I'd seen Jack Nicholson in As Good as It Gets, you know, the TV series Monk. And they'd frustrated me, they'd annoyed me. So I wanted to write something that sort of, for the first time, showed how internal the condition can be and how terrifying the condition can be. And I met Rolfin through a mutual friend. We hit it off pretty quickly. We're both very similar in terms of our outlook on cinema and aesthetics. And the film kind of took shape from there. You know, the idea of presenting it in a surrealistic way, we thought was the best way to portray the inner workings of the mind of somebody with OCD. I just didn't want to put any punchlines in there. I didn't want to put anything to, you know, bada boom kind of thing. You know, when mental illness, it's changing a lot, particularly in the UK now for the better. But often mental illness is always portrayed with a spoonful of sugar and made light of, to try and brighten the moment in the narrative. And we just didn't want to do that. We just wanted people to understand how brutal the condition is.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, anytime you see OCD portrayed in other films and things like that, just when it starts to get uncomfortable, they loosen up with a joke or a punchline of some sort to ease the tension, when, hey, that doesn't happen in our own lives. And clearly you as filmmakers doubled, if not tripled down on the discomfort and tension, because that's the reality of OCD. Rolfin, so many questions to ask you. I think the first one is I'd like to open it up to you, and anything that you want to say, but also I'd like to know what your experience was diving into the world of OCD for yourself.
Hard. I mean, when I first got, the thing that appealed about the project was how emotionally honest and courageous I found Steve's writing. I mean, Steve's always upfront about, you know, his OCD, and but I didn't fully understand it. I mean, even when I got the script through the first time, and it took me, actually Catherine was a great elucidator of what OCD is, and when she described it to me as, look, you know, fundamentally it's an anxiety disorder, then I could like sort of more fully appreciate what Steve had written. But you know, that aside, when I got the script, like the images that I was getting in my head, they're almost like hyper real, and a surrealist leaning aesthetic just came to me immediately, and that's sort of an area of art that I love a lot. And you know, I've got people in my family that suffer with bipolar. So I've had some exposure to sort of mental health issues, but yeah, it was a combination of Steve's courageous writing and this natural sort of aesthetic, this visual aesthetic that was just coming quite easy, that made me think, God, we could make something quite dark, but you know, hopefully quite beautiful, leaning on the work of like surrealist painters, people like Francis Bacon, to kind of portray this room that he's trapped in, which is obviously, you know, just a metaphor for someone, you know, that's got the mind of OCD.
Thank you, Rolf, and appreciate that. And if you're putting questions, I am marking them all. We will get to as many questions as we possibly can. I just want to bring Catherine into the mix. Catherine, this is your first time executive producing a film.
It is, yeah.
And I think you're off to a great start. How did you connect with everybody? What was your experience like? Fill us in a little bit.
I'm probably going to cry during this, actually. I can feel it coming on already. I got a message, an email from Steve after I'd been in a pretty sizable BBC News article. It had been on their homepage for like 10 days, and I was getting lots of emails, and it sounded really interesting. But I couldn't get back to him initially. There was so much going on. And then he wrote back to me a little bit later and said, you know, we've got this director attached. And I read the script. And I think I'd been in recovery from OCD for about 6 years at that point. It still affected me. But reading the script, I felt like I couldn't breathe. You know, I felt like I was back there again. And I thought, you know what? And also been an advocate for a long time. So I was constantly battling against people using OCD the wrong way. And I thought, blimey, if anything's going to do it, this is. And basically I met Steve, I met Rolfin, and from then on we were completely attached at the hip, weren't we, lads? It was absolutely wonderful. I mean, those hour-long like we were in the car for hours together, going to film festivals and shoots, talking about OCD, talking about mental health, and like working with Steve and Rolfin and Ralph, actually talking to him about OCD on the set. You know, everyone was so open. And there were so many people behind the scene as well. You know, there were so many people on set, and every single one of them, all those conversations around it were, you know, about mental health and people being very open about their own experiences of OCD. And so, I mean, hats off to Rolfin and Steve for creating that kind of environment. And honestly, I've loved it. It has completely changed me as a person. I couldn't go anywhere by myself. I just couldn't do anything. And I traveled to America by myself last year and wandered around a little bit by myself. You know, as part of the film festival, I've learned how to stand up for myself in business meetings, all thanks to Steve and Rolfin. So it's not just been oh my goodness, OCD was horrendous for me and obliterated my first year of motherhood. But it's also taught me things that I probably never would have learned otherwise. And I'm extremely, extremely grateful. I've loved it. It's been tough, but I've loved every second of it.
And as always, thank you so much, Catherine, for sharing that. We'll definitely be back to you. And as always, typically when I moderate, I don't say too much. However, I will say that I too am a member of the team. I exec produced along with Catherine. Catherine reached out to me, said I have this amazing project. And as someone in the film industry, I was kind of like, oh, sure, yeah, that's great. We're friends. Send me the stuff. I read the script. I saw the pitch deck. I saw who was starring in it, and I was in 100%. And I've had the sincere pleasure of working with this incredible team. I echo everything that Catherine said. I read the script. I immediately connected. I couldn't breathe. I was like, this was my life for 32 years. And how do we make this? How do we get this so other people can experience this authentic reality of OCD? So it's an incredible team, and they're community patient first in community first in every way for OCD and related disorders. And I'm so excited to be just a small part living on this side of the pond to support the team in a way that I can. So
you weren't a small part, Ethan. You were massive. You may not have been there in person, but you were with us every step of the way. And we are so glad that we have you on our team.
Should thank Russell as well, shouldn't we?
Yeah, my producing partner, Russ, for his work and everyone else that was involved in financing and producing. It could not have been done without you. So thank you so much. I actually want to get to some questions, and I'm keeping an eye on things as quickly as possible. I also encourage everyone on the stream to read the comments, because they're really, really good. And I know, Steve, your eyesight isn't that good. But first of all, as long as we're on Ralph, Pete Chapman at 2:28 p.m. asked, was it tough to help Ralph understand all of the myriad of elements of OCD? I think that's a great question. Rolfin, and Steve, what was it like working with Ralph Ineson, who you may or may not know was in Game of Thrones and Harry Potter and The Witch and is the new Galactus in the Marvel films. He's an incredible actor. So what was that experience like working with him? How did you even get him? How does this work?
I think, first of all, we just sent the script and it was like, straight away, it was like, yeah, I'm in. But this is a brief answer, then I'll let Rolfin take over. But we didn't try to educate him about OCD realistically. It was more about, whatever anxieties he carried as a person, whatever struggles he'd been through as a person, you could just see him bringing that to the table. Not method acting, just sense memory, emotional memory that he brought to the table. Obviously, we explained, what an intrusive thought is and how it can feel, what's left, how you are afterwards, how you are during, this kind of thing. But I think just from our perspective, it was more about letting him do his thing. He's just an incredible professional, unbelievable. Just like once the camera rolls, brilliant. But Rolfing worked with him probably most closely. I sort of probably had a few drinks with him most closely, but Rolfing worked with him most closely, I think.
Well, I think he's something else, Steve. Like, he's just a consummate professional. I mean, his craft is incredible. His emotional range. I mean, and as Steve said, you know, obviously with a short film, you're under intense sort of pressures with time. So to be able to switch it on, I mean, it's sort of, you've got to be super mindful and really relaxed and open, you know, in a very stressful environment to kind of get there. But as Steve said, you know, we didn't, I mean, I was worried that, you know, he might come to me with a question. I had a lot to learn about OCD, so I wanted to, you know, understand it as much as I could. But when we sat down in the costume fitting, you know, within 15 or 20 minutes, he's just a very highly emotionally intelligent, super bright person. You can sit down, we could build rapport and trust within 15, 20 minutes. And Steve and I just said afterwards, look, we know he can do it. He's got the empathy, he's got the craft. And it's there for everyone to see on the screen. I mean, one story I like to tell is we had him on a wide lens. You see the shot in the chair where his face is filling up the frame, and the take went for like 6 or 7 minutes, and there's a lot of emoting going on, you know, and he didn't drop. His performance didn't drop for a second. I mean, that's how good he is. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Rolf. And quickly, Catherine, when did OCD Action enter the picture, and what role did they play in the film?
Oh, we spoke to them all the way through, didn't we, Lee? Constantly. We had Lee, I was talking to Lee about absolutely everything. We wanted to make sure that we got it right. Everything about safeguarding the works. We just wanted to make sure that if we were going to do it, we did it in a way that was as safe as possible. So I've picked her ear about absolutely everything. OCD Action actually gave us our first platform where we did our first screening, and they were brilliantly supportive the whole way through. But I mean, more than that, I know that at any point I can email them and ask their help for anything. They've been absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Lee.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I think the amazingness of the writing and the team that have been involved, you could see right from the start the quality of the depiction of OCD in it, and I think that is it is a very rare thing in raising awareness of OCD, is that real depiction of OCD in such powerful terms. Somebody put something in the chat, and I think a couple of people have said about how it really took your breath away when you read things. And I think that's what's been so powerful about being involved in this project, and such a privilege. So yeah, thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Lee. Always have to let Matt Bannister, our advocate in the UK, who has more positivity and energy than anybody I've ever, I should say, not met in person. But Matt at 229 has a question for all of you, which is, I have a question to all the amazing creators of Waving. Will it be possible for the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5 to be broadcasted for UK public television, also be broadcasted worldwide on international television networks publicly? I know, Matt, he will go personally and advocate for this film. So what do we have to do? Any thoughts?
I mean, that would just be amazing if we could. I mean, I think it's just, yeah, it's being advocates for the film. It's going to be on YouTube, and it's just as much word of mouth as you can generate. You know, short films are vehicles that very rarely live beyond the festival circuit unless they're sort of Oscar winning. But I think, you know, if the more we talk about it, and this evening for me is the most important out of all the 4 or 5 years we've worked together. It's the most important evening, just getting the film out to people with the condition. I've just been desperate to do it for so long. So if the film has resonated, then just tell anybody you can. You know, next time somebody says to you, "I'm a little bit OCD," just slap the link in front of them and say, "No, you're not," and go from there.
I love that. We're going to stick with you, Steve. Nicholas at 2:27 p.m. said, I hope someone explains the symbolism. I know with the lag and things, it may be hard, and it's definitely a heady film to some extent. Steve, do you want to just touch on some of the larger symbolistic aspects of the film and what you touched on?
Yeah, I mean, aesthetically, Rolfing hit the nail on the head. I'm a huge David Lynch fan, so and Rolfin's a huge Francis Bacon fan, and as a result, I became a huge Francis Bacon fan. So the visual imagery is just to show the damage and decay inside someone's mind. You know, it's called a memory palace. There's a thing I read about called a memory palace, where you go into your own mind to retrace things, to look at memories and relive them. But Charlie's room is so decayed and damaged and broken because of the OCD. So we just wanted a room that just looked horrible. The symbolism really, the most obvious overt symbolism is the fact that we travel from a real place, the beach, to an internal space, the building. You know, we're inside his mind, and then we come back out again with the key. You know, an interaction with his wife grounds him again. He does some grounding exercises, brings him out back into the real world. And I suppose the most symbolic aspects of the film are at the end, where Rolfin's genius just really took over. You know, the splitting into three different types of Charlie are really the sort of three possible ways the film could end. It's so irresponsible, I think, to end on a note of suicide. You know, it's not the way we want to talk about things, but you know, you have to consider these things with mental health. So we wanted to show that, I suppose, you know, the lady who approaches him, Sophie, our costume designers again did an amazing job. She's dressed in the suicide awareness colors, the purples and all that kind of stuff. So she's called Grace, which is kind of fairly obvious. You know, just that intervention by a stranger, that one quick question brings Charlie back to himself and sort of saves him from himself. So the end is supposed to symbolize that this battle might have been won. When Charlie turns around and acknowledges himself, you know, this battle might have been won, this moment's a victory, but the war goes on with OCD. There's no easy answers. There's no palliatives that are immediate. So, you know, the fact that Charlie has walked away at the end of the film, you know, means that the love of his family, the call of the family, the tender care of a stranger has brought him back from the brink. So, you know, that's the symbolism at the end. But generally, the major symbolism is how OCD traps you inside your own head so often.
Thank you. Rolfin or Catherine, did you want to weigh in on that?
Do you want to just explain a little bit about the circles? About being the centre of the...
Oh, yeah. So I saw a therapist for quite a long time, a Jungian therapist. And she actually said those lines to me. She said, you know, you make yourself the centre of the universe. And that can sometimes feel like, you know, you're a selfish person, everything has to be about you, but it's not necessarily that. It's like you're this hub in the middle, and everybody you love and care about are connected to you. And if you don't do your compulsions, that world collapses. You know, bad thing, we all know this, bad things will happen if you don't do your compulsions, and it's trying to resist the thought, the compulsion, that chain. So that's where that comes from. And the circle is kind of like the Ouroboros, you know, infinity kind of thing, where it just keeps going and going and going, and you're trying to break that circle. So when they talk about this, when the newsreader talks about the center has fallen, it's all about the responsibility that Charlie feels, and it's extrapolating the idea that what if Charlie actually was responsible for everybody's continued existence, and if he stopped doing his compulsions, the world would fall apart. And then you just push that into a family situation. You know, if Charlie gives up, then everything around him, to him, falls apart.
Thank you, Steve. I want to jump to some questions because all thoughts are welcome, and I think these are important things to discuss. These two questions are along the same lines, but I'll start with the first one at 2:38 p.m. Elvis asked, considering that OCD is represented in waving in a very symbolic way that goes against what people usually see in films, are you worried that people who don't have OCD won't understand it? Catherine, I'll tee that off to you.
I think we spoke about this at one of the film festivals, and I don't have a film background. I've got to be completely honest, I'd heard of surrealism, but I didn't really know what it was until I met Rolfin and Steve and they explained some of the script to me. And I think you can still understand, even if you're not entirely sure it's OCD, but you can still understand that whatever Ralph's going through in the film is causing him a massive amount of distress. You can still see that actually those thoughts are horrible and that he's clearly really upset by having them. So I always almost see it as layers. So, I mean, in a perfect world, there'll be someone who understands the film, explaining it to a loved one that they're showing it to. But in a perfect world, you know, hopefully you would still understand that it's about OCD and it's still really upsetting, and that actually maybe what I've thought about OCD isn't what OCD is up to this point, and without actually needing to know all of the symbolism. That's what I hope anyway, that it's almost layered, because I still would have understood what the film was saying, even if I didn't understand some of the more surrealist symbolism in it. I don't know if you boys want to add anything.
Yeah, and I think this is why because we're going to some dark places. Can you imagine if the treatment was totally different? Let's say that we had in a like a regular middle class home with standard furniture and all of that writing on the wall. Kind of what would you think about this person? Like, would you naturally have empathy for him if he's scrawling all over the tearing up the household furniture, writing on the walls? So I think the mood of the piece hopefully invites people to accept that we're diving into, we're not in the real world here, in an objective place, and I think it needs that symbolism and that treatment to kind of convey those emotions, because typically in film that would all be done through dialogue, wouldn't it, and actions, and Ralph's really not doing very much, and the sound obviously adds a huge amount to the film. And so that, again, if you're watching a social realist drama, you can't do the crazy stuff that we're doing with the sound to help also convey what's going on with the condition.
Well said. I have some thoughts as well. I do want to get to, just because this sort of connects in the same way, Kathy's question at 2:43 p.m., which is, given the general public's fear of mental illness, portraying OCD as psychosis is a big risk. Speak to the downside risks to the OCD community this may create. I think there's a couple clarifications, and then we can go on from there. Go ahead, Catherine.
Does anyone else want to answer that first? I want to have a little bit of think about that one.
Doesn't this touch on sort of what I was just saying, in sense of, like, if you've got a conventional house and all of that writing's on the wall, then I think, somebody might leap to the conclusion this person's having a psychotic episode, they're schizophrenic, whatever it may be, leaping to conclusions. So hopefully I wouldn't, our intention certainly isn't to portray OCD as a psychosis, and we've gone out of our way with the treatment to kind of take people in the right direction. But obviously you can't fully control someone's subjective response to a film.
Yeah, and I think filmmaking is about taking risks, and if you don't take risks, you don't get rewards. And obviously there's a responsibility, but also we just wanted to portray, it's very hard to portray the internal conflict of OCD, the internal damage of OCD, without going to some places visually that are risky. And we're aware of that responsibility, but also as filmmakers and writers and creatives, you take risks. You have to go to places that, and Catherine's always said that there hasn't been anything else like this, and I'm starting to see that point myself now.
We've done everything we can. Sorry, Steve. We've done everything we can to mitigate risk as much as we can. We knew when we all sat down and read this that it was quite brave, and that actually, it may be misunderstood by some people. There are a lot of people with lots of different interpretations, but we've done everything we can to make sure that support is put in place for the OCD community, but that also education's there as well. I mean, immediately we've got advocates surrounding this film, so we've got pieces of writing out there talking about whether you should share your story with the press, or if you're the press, how should you write responsibly about it? We've got an entire website, wavingfilm.com, that talks all about OCD. You can't read about waving without seeing the logos of the biggest OCD charities on the planet, you know. So it's hoped, very much hoped, that people, once they see waving, will be sent straight through to those places to learn more. There's always going to be people who chooses to see the worst. I mean, there's only so much we can do to try to mitigate.
We're a starting point, like chipping away.
Yeah, exactly.
We're a starting point, you know, and art, you know, calling yourself something artistic is always really pretentious, but anything that you put out there, you hope is a starting point. You know, and the fact that this question's been asked is great. It's brilliant. You know, you don't want everybody saying the same thing, but I'll just revert to the same thing, that if we're not interested in we're interested in responsibility, but we're not interested in not taking risks.
I have some thoughts as well, which is, I think that there's a few things. I don't think the film, and I don't think any film, could attempt in 18 or 20 minutes to explain every facet of OCD, every layer, every subtype, every symptom, and every modality of treatment that you use, right? Which is why the singular message is the feeling. What is the feeling? What is the emotion? How hard is it to deal with, right? And I think the takeaway is universal, as everyone here spoke about, that what you walk away, that feeling, whether you have OCD or you don't have OCD, you understand what it feels like in a brief moment to experience OCD. I think the second part is the symbolism is necessary, I think, because it's a conversation, right? And so because we can't explain every facet of OCD, people are going to be like, wow, that made me feel terrible. What does all that mean? And then the next thing is they're going to integrate with advocates and ask questions and comments and be like, well, wait, what is that? What's happening? And get the information that way. Because again, there's no way to fully impart all of that information in one 18-minute clip, right? And the final thing I think is, think about where we are with OCD now. You know, OCD is an adjective. No one understands, or very few in the public understand, that it's a debilitating disorder that can sometimes manifest. It did in my own life. I was hospitalized, and the doctors told me I was psychotic, right? The level of destruction this disorder has right now, it's neatness and cleanliness, and it's a quirk. Well, if that's the worldwide noise, how do you penetrate that? You have to penetrate that with something just as strong and just as intense, right? It's like putting out a 4-alarm fire with a bucket of water. It doesn't work. You need a really big hose and a lot of water, right? And I feel like this is that piece. This is noisy. This is loud. This is uncomfortable. And it's going to break through the adjective noise of OCD and start a conversation about what the disorder really is. And I think art is subjective, and I think everybody's opinions are 100% valid and concerning. But even if somebody goes, wow, I didn't know OCD, you know, does OCD have psychosis? Like, you're starting a conversation that isn't, well, it's just a cool quirk that makes you a really good detective. You know, it's not a superpower. It's not a good quality. It's not something that people should hope for. And I think that's the biggest takeaway. Those pieces are the biggest takeaways of this film. Go ahead, Lee.
I just think what you've just said is so powerful. I wouldn't want to take away from the concerns about psychosis, but I just think it just has the potential to change the conversation, to completely flip the dial in a way that so much other content doesn't. And I just couldn't agree more, Ethan. That was so well said. Thank you.
We're going to end on and also I encourage everyone, thank you for the advocacy in the comment threads. Thank you for all of your questions. Everything is welcome, and we appreciate them greatly. I'm going to end on this question. I'm going to throw it out to Steve, which is at 2:57 p.m. Serious question: was the spinning top a nod to Christopher Nolan's Inception?
No.
That's it. That's
I love that film. But no, it was more like a torture kind of device in terms of just. And a matching. I think it was Rolfin's, a matching of the umbrella and the spinning top. So
it was sort of trying to come up with a symbol or like a metaphor for the anxiety whipping up, and the fact that like it's an innocuous little children's toy. Probably in the back of my mind, Steve, actually was that hedgehog that used to torture you when you were about 10
Oh God, yeah! If I could have got that mother Frigga in there, I would have done. But
the hedgehog that he used to put pens in, and it would just
yeah.
Right.
I've written something about him, so stay tuned.
We have a couple minutes left before I go to closing messages, and also we'll release the link to the film. I want to give Steve, Rolfin, Lee, and Catherine some final thoughts. Catherine, let's start with you.
I just want to say thank you very, very much for watching and the support that we've had during this journey. You know, it hasn't always been easy. Steve and I, when we walked into that room with those intrusive thoughts scrawled across the wall, you know, it was a physical reaction. And I mean, it's been the best thing I've ever done. And it has also been one of the most challenging, and the messages and everything else has been wonderful. And I remember when I was really, really poorly with OCD and I wasn't sure if I actually had a future, I saw a book about OCD in a bookshop, and I thought, oh my goodness, there's so many other people like me that they've actually written a book about it. And now I get to think there's so many people like me. They've actually made a film about it with Galactus from the Fantastic Four, and that is going to stay with me for the rest of my life, you know. And I'm so thankful that you came and that you joined us, and that, you know, we hope we've done you proud, really.
Thank you, Catherine. Lee.
I would love to echo what Catherine says. I mean, thank you all for joining us and for being here, and thank you so much to the team for making such a wonderful film. I'd also just want to encourage anybody that has seen this and feels like actually, you know, that they identified with the end about connecting and wanting to reach out for support or for information or for help. You know, there is so much hope to, you know, reach out for treatment and to start on your recovery journey. And if that's where you're at, either reach out to the IOCDF or to OCD Action. It's so important. There's so much support out there if that's where you're at right now. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Rolfin.
Yeah, well, this film, I mean, it's been 3 years of really hard work, but it's just been an absolute honor and a privilege, like, to be trusted with the script from Steve, to have met Catherine, yourself, Ethan, Lee. I mean, Ethan, if it wasn't for you, this script and the treatment would just be stuck in a drawer somewhere. I mean, the work that you've put in behind the scenes has just been absolutely incredible, and your support has just been amazing. And like, for me personally, like, you know, I've found a lot of comfort in sorrow through art myself, be it songs, poetry, films. So to be able to, you know, opportunities like this don't come along too often, and the comments on Catherine's guest book at wavingfilm.com have just left me in floods of tears. And it just, you know, to you know, with you all, create something that, you know, connects with people and they find some comfort in. I mean, you know, it just makes it all worthwhile. So yeah, thanks to you all, and thanks to everyone who joined us.
Thank you, Rolfin. And Steve.
Well, this film's for you. You know, the film is for everybody with the condition. You know, my journey has gone from feeling like a freak at 11 years old to getting the diagnosis, to multiple depressions, to, you know, always feeling alone with the condition, to now feeling pretty bold about, you know, there's an amazing community out there, and we're probably the most resilient people in the world. You know, people don't understand that OCD isn't like something that hits you twice a day. It's like just every second, you know. And for anybody going through it out there, you know, we understand, you know. And this film is for you. So people no longer, you know, call us, you know, Ethan said it the best, you know, it's just removing OCD as an adjective in any form of discussion about it. It, you know, it still happens now, and it just drives me bananas. So this film is for you, and just please tell everybody you know, and share it and review it, and, you know, go from there. Thank you so much for coming. The comments are really touching.
Thank you, Steve. And I'll echo what Steve said. The link to the film is officially live and on YouTube. You can find it in your chat. Please go to it, share it. As Steve said, this is yours. This is for you. It's to you. It's for you to use in any way you see fit to continue to spread the message, advocate, reduce stigma, educate, help people find accessible, affordable effective treatment, and all of the above. So thank you to Steve, Rolfin, Lee, and Catherine for joining us. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. We so appreciate it. Obviously, thanks to the IOCDF. Thank you to OCD Action. Thank you to Taming Olivia for all of your support. As always, the IOCDF and OCD Action are donor-supported nonprofit organizations. Please consider visiting their websites and making a donation. And thank you for spending your Thursday with us. We so appreciate it. This was an honor and a privilege for all of us. You are all, for lack of a better word, total badasses, and we thank you so, so much.
You really are.
That.
Thank you.
Stay safe, stay vigilant, feel the feels. Don't let OCD off the hook, and we'll see you next week at our usual programming. Have a beautiful rest of your day or evening.